Hey everybody, my name is Jim.
This is Ennis.
And we are Inner Solutions. We are a company that is dedicated to helping you work through panic attacks, anxiety, depression, or any mental health ailments that you may be having, because we're two guys who had it all. Today we're going to talk about why are you so angry all the time? Now, anger is an emotion that I struggled with all through my teenage years, and I even went to anger management. And what I found at anger management really blew my mind is that it wasn't the anger that was my problem. It was what was underneath it.
So that's an interesting point about anger. It's one of those emotions where when you're feeling it, it seems like this is all there is, and there's nothing beyond this. I'm just angry because they did that or they said this, and it seems very clear. But when you begin to investigate your anger, you realize that there's actually a lot underneath it. And in a sense, your anger is there to protect you from the more painful experiences of rejection, sorrow, sadness, fear. These are all emotions that are just underneath the surface of the anger. And so to give an example of this, there's a great story that I got from, I think, Preston Smiles, where imagine that there's a couple and they've moved in together, and they're starting to have some arguments about where to put the kitchen towel. Whenever that argument comes up, they get pretty triggered at each other, and they don't even know why. Why am I getting so upset about this kitchen towel? Well, like with all things, it's not just about the kitchen towel. It's about all the things underneath it. So he goes on to describe how the woman in this example, she grew up in a home where everything was filthy, totally dirty, totally messy, and having the kitchen towel in the place that she wanted represented to her finally having a home that was safe and clean and predictable. The guy, on the other hand, he grew up in a home where everybody was constantly telling him what to do. He was bullied. He was basically just pushed around his whole childhood. And for him, being told where to put the kitchen towel was an extension of that feeling unsafe, feeling disrespected. So when they would start to have that discussion about where do I put the kitchen towel, it brought up all these old issues of feeling disrespected, feeling unsafe, feeling unheard. And only once they acknowledged those feelings and started to express that, hey, you know, I'm not just angry, but I'm feeling unheard. I'm not just angry, but I'm feeling like pressured. Then there's real communication. Then there's real understanding of what's going on. And the relationship, of course, blossomed from there, and they could move on from the kitchen towel. So it's important whether you're in a relationship and you're getting angry at your partner, or you're at work and you're getting angry at your coworkers, or you're just getting angry at yourself. It's important to look at what's underneath this. Why am I feeling this way?
Yeah, it's important to frame anger as a symptom, as something that comes over you to protect you from feeling a way that you don't want to feel. So if you're in an angry state, what you can do is just backtrack, like you said, just backtrack to the moments before the anger kicked in. What was bubbling up in you? Now, this can be difficult because sometimes anger becomes a habit. And the more that anger overtakes you or kind of overwhelms you, the more that it's going to become a habit. So really getting into this as early as possible to not only help this angry part after a while, but to understand first and foremost, understand what is underneath this anger. What is that feeling, like you were saying? And typically it's a fear or a hurt, right? It's a vulnerability. It's a feeling you don't want to feel, and that anger comes in to protect you, to help you from feeling powerless or hurt or vulnerable. And so ways to start to break that habit can be very tricky. One can be meditating on anger and practicing mindfulness, compassionate mindfulness, practicing being more aware of your feelings. Now that mindfulness will help that instead of this instant anger that comes up, that might be a habit, to give you a little more space and time to feel like, oh, I'm starting to feel hurt again. I'm starting to feel invisible again. I'm starting to feel ignored again. And then you can start to diagnose the problem and say, honey, it's funny for me to look at you and say, honey, but honey, I'm starting to feel unheard, or honey, I'm starting to feel ignored.
Right.
And then you can also take that unheard or ignored feeling or whatever it might be that's triggering your anger and go and explore it more, either on your own or with a coach or somebody who can help you.
That's something that I give to the clients a lot, where the same way that when fear arises, instead of just reacting to the fear, being able to sit with it and say, okay, I'm going to, just for a second, I'm going to separate all these thoughts and stories that I'm telling about the fear, and I'm just going to experience the direct experience of it, the emotions that are prevalent in my body. And so by doing that, let's say you're in a situation at home or at work, and you start to realize you're getting angry. You're like, oh, I'm getting triggered. Something's bubbling up inside me. Instead of going into that story, it's so helpful, if possible, to go and just be alone for a minute or two. And when you go and sit by yourself, to feel the raw sensations in your body. Anger, like all emotions, has a location. You might feel a tension in your throat. You might feel a tightness in your chest. And by sitting there and just feeling those sensations and practicing a sort of meditation where you're allowing those sensations to be there, you can, for one, break the momentum. So you're not like going from just a little aggravated to extremely rageful. And you can ask questions like, what's underneath this? Why am I feeling this way? And this is a question that you may get an answer to right there and then. If you almost like looking at the anger, feeling it, and directing the question towards it, you might get a response that will surprise you. And this is one method that I really emphasize to people. Take that pause. You use that word a lot. Take that pause, just a second even, to step back and go, hold on. What if I just let this anger be here without trying to push it away, without immediately throwing it at somebody? And I think it's hard to do that without some kind of meditation practice, without some kind of self-awareness practice to let you know that, hey, you're starting to get angry. Because I think a lot of people, the warning signs are there before the moment they snap.
Yeah.
And at times it feels like I just got angry out of nowhere. Yeah, but I mean, didn't you notice 10 minutes before you were kind of rigid and you were kind of like starting to have certain thought patterns?
Right.
Rarely does it just come out of nowhere.
Yeah, so there's a couple more things, which is, number one, know your kind of vulnerable spots. And this could be an extraordinarily useful exercise to sit down and just write out, where are the places where I'm continually getting angry? Is it with my kids? Is it with my wife? Is it at work? Just write that out so that you have it on paper and you can start to explore these areas. Then you can start to backtrack, well, why am I getting angry at work? And you can really get to the source of that. Now, the other thing is, anger works, and that's a problem with starting to try to backtrack into a more vulnerable place, is that typically when somebody gets really angry, it scares the hell out of everybody else around them, and so everything stops. There's a reason why, if you're habitually getting angry, it's happening, because it's kind of working. The problem with it is it's extremely destructive, and it's destructive to building trust in relationships. It's destructive to like your career or how people think about you, and it's destructive to kind of your body, as far as it's releasing these stress chemicals and wanting to release the energy in a destructive way. So it's important to get really, really clear and intentional about what is the anger costing me, because it's not always a comfortable thing to go back into that vulnerable or hurt state. And the truth is, if I didn't have help in understanding and dealing with my anger, I would have never been able to get to that deeper place in a kind of way that was safe for my body. So it's important to really honor how you feel and honor these parts of you that may need help or some assistance in bringing to the surface and exploring, because it can be a really triggering thing to be in a state of hurt or be in a state of vulnerability for people who aren't used to it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I feel like that's such a common pattern that we fall into, where with any strong emotion, we tend to either repress it, distract ourselves, or express it. And I feel like expression can sometimes feel better than distracting ourselves and repressing it.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes people fool themselves into thinking that yelling at somebody is their authentic expression of
Right.
like, well, I'm just being me, I'm just expressing myself. Well, there's actually better ways to handle those difficult emotions that go beyond repression, expression, and distraction. And it always comes back to processing those emotions. This is a term we use a lot on this channel. What does it mean to process your emotions? Basically, it means to feel whatever sensations are there without any kind of resistance, without any kind of pushing them away. And just for 5 minutes, feel your body, feel whatever is there. And that can go a long way to actually processing these emotions so that they don't come back, as opposed to expressing it, where I think that's the big difference between expression and processing is it comes back later.
Right. And it's important to know that this anger may be masking a really sensitive, vulnerable person. I think that's the key word here, is that if you find yourself getting angry a lot, that you're a sensitive person. Like, you're being triggered. Some people are triggered and they kind of shut down or go into a depression. Some people freeze up, and then some people manifest that fight mechanism, which typically can turn into anger. And it's that you detect that there's some kind of threat in front of you right there. It's that fight response. It's that anger that comes forward to protect you from how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I guess just to summarize, anger is often there as a surface level emotion to protect us from some deeper feelings of hurt, fear, sadness. And when we are triggered, it's important, number one, to write out all the patterns of where you're getting triggered. Is it specific people, specific situations? And get a lot of clarity on your trigger points. And then from there, when you know that you're going to be in that situation, you can kind of prep yourself and say, okay, the next time that I'm going to be in that situation, which may trigger me, I'm going to pause. When I start to feel myself getting angry, I'm just going to go and be by myself for a minute or two and just feel my body, feel that anger, and process it, and ask questions like, why am I feeling this? What's going on here? Because only when you get to that underneath level, that those emotions that are causing the anger in the first place, then you can really make some progress and stop getting so triggered all the time, basically.
Yeah, and it's important to know that with anger or any other kind of mental health situation that you're going with, anything emotional that you're going through, no matter how long it's been going on, no matter how bad it is, you're never, ever stuck. You might just need some support. So please, if you like this video, click the like and subscribe button. If you have any questions, comment below. Our information is in the subtext if you want to email us or reach out or need any resources. But for Ennis, I'm Jim. Thank you so much, honey. We'll see you guys real soon.